There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print and say that this thing has got to go. And we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, everyone will want a sign.
Hello, cousins. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Social Contract. I'm Nicolette, and I'm here with my illustrious co-host, Mr. Jared.
Good morning, good morning.
Or should I say Mayor Jared? You give off the vibe of like one of those small town fictional mayors. Like, you know, so a mayor of like, you know, Briar Shelf or something.
We're gonna like fix the reservoir.
Right? Yeah, like the cool, like chill mayor who likes to go to the local coffee shop and sing songs for everybody, and everybody's like, man, we got the coolest mayor. So Mayor Jared, I know you give me that vibe, so I think it's cool. It's an honor to bestow upon.
I would like to announce my new run for mayor of Glendale. If you actually, the current mayor of Glendale is like, imagine like a dictionary picture of mayor. He's like a very serious-looking Caucasian man with like all white hair and a beard, and it's like, he looks like he could be an Old West mayor at least.
Yeah, that's I love it because you just have this like authoritative like, I'm cool though. I'm the cool guy. I'm the cool mayor. Yeah, let's do a fundraiser for the reservoir. Let's do it. Unions for everybody. Okay, guys. So we'll just sit here and bullshit with each other all day long. So it's time that we probably get down to business at this point. We were broadcasting on Twitter as for our re-debut, but we had a little bit of some technical issues. So now we pop back over to, for the time being, to YouTube. But you can definitely still catch us on our Twitter. You know, we cross post on there. So, you know, and as things kind of evolve, stuff is going to change as we go on and try to figure out what's working best for us and what we need to do and how we need to do it and how people are interacting with us. So at least on YouTube, you can comment and we can see your comments. Otherwise, you know, on Twitter, we weren't able to see comments and it was hard to retrieve the video ultimately. So we're happy to be able to interact with you once more.
Pulling video was weirdly difficult because I've definitely ripped video off Twitter before, and that's when we both found out that a broadcast is saved differently on Twitter, or at least just treated differently within its system than a video. So downloading it is this whole like, well, you can get like the data, and then you have to run that through this, and that will eventually produce a video. It just didn't work for mine, but I'm also on a Mac, which is probably why.
And then, well, you know, I have a PC, but it was still just as difficult. And then I tried to import it into it came out in two pieces because I had to import it. I tried to import it into my editing program, and then for whatever reason, it was completely blurry. And I'm just like, oh my God, two pieces it is, because I just couldn't get it to go where I wanted it to go in the time frame that I wanted it to go in. Also, I wanted to mention that I realized that my lighting is a little bit wonky today. I usually have a curtain open in front of me to give me good lighting. But like 80% of the rest of the country, we are in a pretty substantial heat wave at the moment. So I've got the curtains closed. And it's a good reminder. I'd like other people to know that, like, hey, you don't have to. You'd be like, hey, it's hot in here. The air doesn't work. Close your goddamn curtains. People will sit there with all of their curtains open and wonder why it's so hot, and they're running all their their dishwasher and in the dryer, and they're like, why won't my house cool down? Well, that's also a really good way to exploit the power grid. So, being that we promote socialism here, do your part and try to conserve your energy usage as best as you possibly can. So you're going to be seeing me in kind of wonky lighting maybe for the next couple of episodes until things chill out a little bit. So use that as your reminder that also you should be in wonky lighting. Well, okay.
Here in Phoenix, our house is like a perfect dark box. We first purchased this. House has massive windows, which I guess made sense when you didn't have air conditioning, but this house was built when like it was built in like 1969, but the kind of neighborhood that it was in, like in the late 60s, I think the people here would have been able to afford an air conditioning unit.
Yeah, probably at that time.
Because these giant windows make little sense because we went to get them replaced because going from single pane to double pane windows was a massive, if not for the heat, for the sound, it got so much quieter. But trying to get them replaced, everyone, like all the estimates are, your windows are very, very big. They will be very expensive to replace. Yeah. It's like, oh crap, no one asked me about this. Our whole block has these gigantic picture windows, which are great when it is like 50 degrees out in the winter, in like the dead of January when it's nice and cool here. But rest of the year, double layer blackout curtains. Go to IKEA. Good deal on blackout curtains.
Yeah. My house is actually just about the same age. It was, I think the picture windows were at the time. Mine was built in 1964. And we also have big picture windows, but in that kind of a thing. But we do the same thing. We block them out and just keep everything as not necessarily so that you can, I want to be in the dark. It's about keeping the heat out, whatever you have to do to keep the heat out and try to keep from burning your air conditioner out. And, and you look at yourself doing these things, and then you'll walk into a business with their doors wide open and air conditioning running. And it's like, thanks a lot, jerks. Thanks a lot. And actually in New York, I don't know if it's literally illegal, but I think it's on like kind of the cusp, if not, because you can report businesses for doing those types of things. I don't think anywhere else cares, but it's not cool. So just, since again, we promote this whole idea of having the social contract and doing, your part in any little bit of a way. You got to put yourself out and sit in the dark and get some weird lighting every now and again when you're trying to do your show. So let it be a reminder to all of you. Anyways, thank you for joining us today. Even though we're kind of in a weird space of figuring out where broadcasting is going to be and what we're going to do and how things are. So we're still in that kind of gray area. This is our second episode back. If you saw the previous episode, then you know that we have parted ways with RBN amicably. And so now we're on our own and doing our own thing. So the content won't really change, other than just we are more comfortable with going on tangents of different things and different topics now. And so there's that. And today we've got a pretty good docket for you. You may have heard, but might be confused about what exactly it means. That let me get the actual full name of Le Bill here. The House passed a bill. That's just the House, not the House and the Senate. So, but it remains to be seen. But the House passed a bill called that they do every year, the National Defense Authorization Act, and that basically authorizes military spending, and then whatever else they can sneakily cram in there. And the House has approved $895 billion, which is almost $1 trillion with a T, for military spending. And this also includes automatic registration for selective services for 18-year-old males. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit, coming into further into the hour. But Jared's going to start us off, I believe, with some interesting news he's been looking into. Where Zelensky goes, he reminds me of like when you see like a cat or a dog, like in the like they're begging for a treat, like he's begging for more money. And they always capture it. Yeah, they
I did
capture him
not
in the
choose
pictures
this.
like this, and I don't think that it's. Yeah, I don't think that's by accident. So he's been examining this story, keeping an eye on this story for us, and he's going to enlighten us about how Zelensky's begging for more money at a peace summit for Ukraine. Some countries are like, no, we're not giving you more money. Russia was definitely excluded from this conversation. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So I'm going to turn things over to him and let him learn us something today.
This is one of those. It's one of those conflicts where I still see people occasionally more than occasionally, surprisingly frequently on various social media things that still have the Ukraine flag in their username, and I just have to assume at this point that they just haven't paid attention to the conflict. The most confusing one is when you will see the combination of like the Palestinian flag and the Ukrainian flag, and it's like, okay, what's going on there? Like, how do
these things are pretty different. So
like, how do you guys Well, I guess if you perceive it as like big evil Russia attacking Ukraine and then big evil U.S. Israel attacking Palestine, and like if that's all the farther you think into it, maybe I could see the branched logic there. But the conflict has not been going well. I think the small amount that we've really been hearing about it, at least as an American, I'm an American who pays a little. Both of us are more Americans that pay more attention than your average person, probably. Like we hear more of this. We
do
think
have a
about
show.
Yeah, like even just because of this show we do once a week, I pay a little bit more attention than the average person, and I never hear about the Ukrainian war. Like sometimes NPR will put on a story of like my name is blah blah blah, and I had to free Ukraine because of the war, and here's all the stuff I had to do to get my family out, and I'm like, man, that really sucks. Why don't we talk about why it's so hard for your male relatives to leave Ukraine? Why don't we talk about like, as a negative how military conscription is not a horribly popular thing, and if you ask your average Ukrainian, they do not want to go fight in this war. The average age of a Ukrainian soldier is somewhere north of 40 years old. I think it's something like 45 years old, but I don't want to exaggerate or spread disinformation. Over and over, the evidence continues to show that like Ukraine was supposed to have there was like a spring offensive last year that was supposed to happen and definitely didn't. And then there was this offensive and they'll keep talking about like over the last 8 months the front line has moved 5 inches, or it's like flashbacks of what you would hear in school about the Korean War, where it's like we spent all this time, money, and people, and the line went from here to here. Like nothing really changed. So the first thing I heard this was like media blitz. I heard about this like every time I got in the car, because that's what I'm mostly tuned to NPR because it doesn't play conventional commercials. They'll just do like a short line read for like the MacArthur Foundation brought to you by, and then they just go on to whatever the next like the weather. So it's the least annoying thing I can put on. They talked about this peace summit every single time, like once an hour. It was like on heavy rotation, like a new pop song. They wanted to make sure you knew there was some kind of peace summit and that Russia wasn't in it, which they seem to throw out as like, see, and this is how much we disrespect Russia. We're doing this all. But I'm over here like, how do you make the peace plan when one of the two belligerents in the conflict is not there? It's like saying, yeah, me and my this side neighbor both agreed that my this side neighbor gives me their house, and I know you weren't there to talk about it, but we did make this decision and it is binding. But we have our major global South nations cited Russia's absence or Israel's. I forgot Israel was there.
Jesus.
So how do you put that together? There, emoji flag people. How does it make sense? Or Israel's presence as reasons for not accepting the communique. I pronounced that right the first time. So this article is actually a step beyond just talking about the summit. We're reading from Al Jazeera, and this is why some countries refuse to sign the plan. Because something like 80 of the 90, about 100 delegations from countries and international organizations attended the Switzerland-hosted Summit on Peace in Ukraine last weekend, aimed at crafting a path that many participants said could pave the way to ending Russia's war on its smaller neighbor. But while a vast majority of participants signed on to the short communique issued at the end of the summit, several key nations did not. The 2-day diplomatic summit took place in the Bergenstock resort in Stahnstad, renowned for its sandals. Switzerland in Switzerland. Birkenstock Resort in Stahnstadt, Switzerland, and was attacked by United States. It was attacked by Kamala Harris. She came in on a fighter jet.
You're so used to it. Your brain just went there.
Oh man, I'm sober. I had coffee. I am not under the influence of anything. Alongside leaders from the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, diplomats from many other nations. You know, the whole world. Whenever they'll be like, the whole world is united in this conflict, and then they show the map, and the whole world is England, U.S., Australia, Japan, like NATO. Yeah. It's NATO. It's NATO.
Yeah,
it just
exactly.
sounds. At this point, it's becoming eye rolling. To like saying NATO is like saying George Soros. It makes people just go, oh. All you do is complain about NATO. It's like, NATO's the problem. I don't know what to say. Here is more about the Ukraine peace communique and why some countries did not sign. Why did the Ukraine peace what did it say? The communique laid out what it said was a common vision on crucial aspects, quotes everywhere, including that all nuclear installations, including the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, should be safe, according to International Atomic Energy Agency. So, like, don't bomb any power plants. The power plant, Europe's largest, has been at the center of the Russia-Ukraine battles since, like, literally, it's just kind of close, since the early days of the war, sparking concerns about the potential for a nuclear accident. Bullet 2, the free flow of Ukrainian agricultural products should be allowed to interested third countries. Global food security depends. Yeah, they do a lot of the world's wheat, and that should be allowed through. I don't think, is that a thing Russia is stopping? I mean, strategically it would make sense, but I don't remember hearing a lot about.
I have not heard specifically that, and I feel like even propagandistically, we would be hearing that if that was even remotely.
It's weird how little you hear about this at all. That's why I'm like, I don't know.
I haven't heard of them interfering with their production because they are like a major supplier of grains and wheats to the rest of the world, which the United States is buying the lion's share of right now.
Yeah, you'll hear about how like the war in Ukraine is like contributing to like famine in Africa because that's where that half of the world. Like over here, we get our wheat from like Kansas, in California. Like we make a lot of our own food. But the whole other half of the world, like Ukraine's almost on the exact other side of the world from us, vaguely. They get a lot of the yellow in the Ukrainian flag is for the wheat. There's a ton of wheat in Ukraine. What is it? The document described attacks on merchant ships and civilian port infrastructure in the Black Sea and Azov Sea as unacceptable. I mean, hey, man, isn't it weird how how Yemen is stopping shipping in the other? How do you have both of those flags? Like, how can you do both? Well, you see them shooting at ships for this war bad, them shooting at ships for this war good.
Yeah. I think it's people just like, I'm for the current thing. I haven't actually looked into this. This is not for me to understand. It's just that so that I'm not. It's sort of the liberal point of view. Like I want to get on the bandwagon, but I don't actually want to get involved.
Like, if you yourself are Western Ukraine or Ukrainian at all, and you have whatever opinion on this conflict, by all means, I would never besmirch you, never shout you down. It's just these rando, like, vague libs. Current thing. It's good to have this flag in my bio. Like, some of them still have the Taiwan flag and they're in Hong Kong from like way back. I'm like, okay, you just never take them off.
Yeah.
Bullet 3, all prisoners must be exchanged and all Ukrainian civilians who have been unlawfully. So I noticed that in these 3 bullet points, it doesn't include. Oh, I understand, because this is what actually got signed. Because if you talk to Zelensky and the NATO powers as to what they would require for a peace plan, it is essentially complete Russian surrender. They have to give up everything that they got through both, like also including Crimea. So everything that they got through Crimea was a referendum, whether or not you believe it like counts. And then you have the other 2 regions who had the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics who did have referendums internally, but again, do they count? It depends. Like people like those referendums simply by referendum I mean vote. People voted as to whether or not they wanted to leave. In Crimea, most people voted that they wanted to join Russia. Same thing happened in the 2 People's Republics. Whether or not those count is kind of up to you and your personal standards of what you think counts in elections. But in order for the current like Western-backed peace plan is Russia give up everything, including Crimea, which happened in 2012, like before any of this shit even got going in 2014, which is just clearly not. Oh yeah, they have to pay reparations as part of it. Like all these things where you're like, well, clearly they're never gonna do that shit. Or things where Ukraine would have to have some like crushing victory in this war to be able to make those demands, and that is not what is happening. And I don't like talking about this because people just assume I'm happy about it. It's like, oh look, fucking Jared loves that Ukraine is like, I'm mad the war is happening, which I've been saying since day one. The Russian plan, the Russian peace ask is exactly what it was before the war even started. They want those two regions that voted. They want Crimea, who voted, and they want they want a Ukraine to pledge itself as neutral. When they say neutralize Ukraine, they don't mean neutralize as in like kill. They mean neutralize as in, you know how Mexico could not join a military alliance with Russia? They can't. They legally cannot. They are neutral. They have been neutralized. No one talks about how Mexico should be able to join a Chinese military thing if they want, because that would be ridiculous. Like, of course, the United States would never stand for that. So it's not that unreasonable of an ask in the opposite direction for Russia, a country that has nuclear weapons. So it's not really an option to just go to effing war with. Who signed the joint communique on Ukraine? In all, 82 delegations signed on to report the communique. Swiss President Viola Amherd told a news, I was like, that's going to be hard. I'm like, no, Amherd, I can say that. Told a news conference that the great majority of participants agreed to the document. Some of those include, ready for some NATO countries, Australia, Austria, Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, the European Commission, European Council. Is the European Commission a country? I guess it's a delegation. European Council, European Parliament, really just the European Parliament itself. Well, did the House of Representatives sign? Did
anybody who wants to kind of sign the get well card?
The Virginia State House signed. The the Boy Scout Troop 897.
Right?
The Masons. All right. Yeah. Georgia. See, there you go, Georgia, American country. They mean the European country of Georgia. Yeah. Germany, Ghana, Greece, Ireland, Israel. Ireland, what the fuck? Italy, Japan, Kenya, Kosovo, Latvia, Norway, UK, US, Ukraine, Turkey, Serbia, Qatar, Palau. People who you would expect. Nobody brought up that Israel's there because I'm hearing about this from the NPR. So they didn't say Israel wasn't there, but they'd know enough not to bring that up. But that's pretty freaking funny. Oh, look, which countries did not sign on? Mexico. I'm telling you, Mexico's been making little moves that make me very proud of Mexico. India, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, funny, Thailand, Indonesia, and the UAE attended the summit, represented by foreign ministers and envoys, but were among those who did not sign. So that means they didn't like sign an anti-agreement. They just were like, we're here, but we're not gonna sign the piece of paper that's not gonna do anything anyway. Right. Brazil attended the Ukraine summit as an observer, but did not back the communique. Russia was not invited to the summit, which Moscow dismissed as futile. China also did not attend the two-day event. Pakistan, which counts China as its closest ally, was invited but chose not to attend. So I assume China invited? Okay, it doesn't say China wasn't invited, so I assume they also were. Why did they not sign? India, oh boy. In a statement, Secretary West of India's Ministry of External Affairs, Pavan Kapoor, said that New Delhi decided to avoid association with the joint communique because of Russia's absence from the summit. I'm going to kind of skim these ones because there's a bunch of them. Saudi Arabia, Prince bin Farhan Al Saud, the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia, shared similar concerns, delivering his statement at the summit. We believe it's important to the international community. So basically, they're all saying, like, look, man, you did this with only one half of the parties even here. Right. South Africa's reasons for not backing the communique were different. The country's national security advisor, Sidney Mufamadi, wrote in a statement that it was surprising that this conference, Israel is present and participating 5 days after United Nations-backed commission accused Israel of committing war crimes against Palestinians. Mufamadi questioned the legitimacy of a communique that its sponsors argued were driven by respect for international law when Israel has been accused by many UN officials of violating international law. South Africa has accused Israel of genocide in Gaza, and in a case at the International Court of Justice. So South Africa continues to be amazing, very funny, very good.
Israel's presence there really seems to be, like when you have a friend who has a friend and keeps bringing them to your parties, and you're like, fuck this guy. He keeps tearing up all my shit and getting drunk and throwing up in my house. And he does it everywhere he goes, and everybody hates this dude. I don't care if he's your friend, stop bringing him. That's really got the same kind of energy going on here. So
taking Israel to a peace summit
into the international community for legitimacy purposes, because they know that everybody, not just like citizenry who talk on the internet like us, but like South Africa, these other countries are like, we're like really actual countries that are for real, and this is a settler colony, and they've only been there for a few decades. And they've been terrorists the entire time. So
South Africa is trying to, they're making moves to show that, hey, we feel bad about that whole apartheid thing, and we're making moves in the other direction, as opposed to Germany, where it's like, hey, we felt really bad about that Holocaust thing, so we're going to help you do your own Holocaust now.
Yeah, we're going to do it. Yeah, exactly. It's such a liberal, okay, now you get to have one. Everybody gets to participate in a Holocaust situation.
To keep your exact same analogy, but add a thing to it, it's like bringing Israel to a peace summit is like bringing a raging alcoholic to an AA meeting. Like, we're all here for a specific purpose, and this is the guy who is very against that. Like, he's drinking right now.
Yeah, he really doesn't care about anyone else at this event. It's just about clout. And I think that's it. It's just that we're constantly yeah, come along. We, meaning the United States, or NATO, essentially trying to bring them in on things because it's our cash cow, essentially. Israel, not this situation notwithstanding, but Israel is essentially our money laundering operation. It is our stronghold, our meaning NATO, United States. It's our stronghold in that area of the world. They do want to expand its territory. Israel is not really the sovereign, we make our own decisions type of a situation. It's all completely dependent on what is being brought into it and taken out of it. It's not something that exists on its own. It's not some illustrious, historical country. It does obviously, there are religious ties to that area of the world, but, most religions have some sort of ties to that area of the world and aren't necessarily saying that, this is mine, I'm keeping it all for myself. So we, the Western world looks at, the NATO countries look at it as a way to do dirty work and hold that, keep that stronghold and expand the influence of NATO, the influence of the United States, as well as gain the resources. And that's what this whole entire conflict has always been about and is currently about, is we're really backing Israel to push forward into acquisitioning the land. And it will not stop with Gaza and Palestine, to be clear. If you walk through this forward, because, we've been on this for 8-9 months now, and really have not seen much of a change other than people getting more invested in the situation, which I think has been very surprising because, a lot of the times, the students at the protests for Gaza and people in the streets are protesting, the killing of people that they will never meet and don't necessarily have something in common with, because they realize genocide is fucking bad, right? So, to get that many people that interested in the whole world watching, this is not going according to the, very militaristic acquisitioning powers of NATO and what they've always done. And where people were just like, yeah, if America's doing it, it's probably right. And that's what leads us to the question about what were they doing at any kind of peace summit whatsoever? And that really, I would say, would be NATO influence, trying to bring them in and legitimize them in a way that they are not recognized as legitimate by a lot of the world, a lot of world governments, and a lot of, people at this point, not just American protesters, but people are protesting all over the world about this kind of thing. Even in other authoritative countries like Japan, you see protests, and Australia, you see protests. It's not just, the more liberalized or socialized countries that, you see this, and it's happening everywhere. So the world is watching this situation, yet we're really not seeing any forward progress. So having them at a place, I would say that not only was this entire situation in pretty poor taste, but unsurprising, but having them there is just like, oh my God, come on, really, like come the fuck on. So that's, that's where we really are with all of this. But I don't know that you'd ever really look at America and NATO as having good taste in the first place, or doing what's good for people.
It seems like the goal, because I think I was kind of hoping the article would go into more detail about it, but what Russia says they want for their peace, for what they would want for a peace plan they would accept, is you give up all those regions. They say 4 regions. I'm not sure who the 4th one is. It's Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, and I don't know number 4. Maybe it's like a chunk of territory. Basically, the lines need to be drawn where they are currently. Like, all right, we got up to here. That's now part of Russia. You guys need to give up your bid to join NATO. And I don't remember if that's in addition to the whole neutral country situation, or if that's like considered the same thing. Like, don't join NATO, remain neutral. And that is the same deal that was being offered before the war started, like since 2014 around. So, I don't know. Like, I don't want to try to project intentions onto anybody, but it seems like Russia is not actually that interested in taking over all of Europe, which seems to be the big complaint where people are like, well, why do you guys even care about this war in Ukraine? Like, it doesn't really affect you. They'll say, well, we have to stop Putin from going through all of Europe. And so far, the moves being made are not those of someone who wants to take over all of Europe.
Right.
Like, why is Poland a country that's next? Like, it's going to run right through Ukraine, right into Poland. It's going to be freaking 1940 all over again.
Right, and I think a lot of it is like the propaganda is fanning those same flames. And in one sense, they're trying to say Russia's going to take over like Germany did, and on another sense, Germany's like, let help Israel do Holocaust. So
they
it's
want to
really
let Israel do greater Israel, like you're hinting at, where it's Israel
right,
wants
yes.
to expand and take
The
more
greater
territory.
Israel is exactly, and that's not like something that we made up for the show. Like, that's a real thing that has been discussed and is in topic of conversation. Nobody's really specifically owned up to saying that, yeah, like this is the plan, because they don't want people to know that, because it would be usurping other boundaries of countries that are established and are there.
And kind of like what someone else has done recently that we're all very mad about. I'm talking about the Russia situation. It's why do you have both of those flags in your profile? So it's okay if Israel wants to take over territory, but it's not okay if Russia.
Right, and that goes back to what you were saying at the top of the hour, which is, what do these two things have in common? Because basically nothing. That's what people are very confused about this whole situation. I think it probably comes down to obviously this I'm for the current thing, but also trying to project to people like, oh, I know what's going on in the world. I pay attention. I read, and they don't. And a lot of us are, hamstringed by that. I don't necessarily see it as an excuse, because like we're all pretty much in bad situations. So if you're not paying attention, it's because you have the luxury of not paying attention. This is why these movements generally start with students and young people and poor people and people of color, because these are the marginalized groups who are considered by society as not having this equal or any value to those who are well off or doing well. But now that we are the balance of power is kind of tipping in the direction of the proletariat, for the fact that everyone is struggling way more than they have in decades. And we're basically living in Reagan's wet dream at this point, where the government is owned completely by corporations, and they dictate the local laws, the state laws, the national laws. They dictate where the money goes, and that's why we have people can't afford food. There's food deserts. People can't afford housing. Homelessness is at an all-time high. I don't have to go down the whole list. This is something that was like constantly getting drilled into people's heads. But we are in a bad way. We have, zero infrastructure. Drive under any bridge and you'll see it's completely crumbling. Just a matter of time before it falls over. So, the reason that we're being pushed and pushed and pushed is what the intention of those who are the 1%ers is to keep us busy and distracted by trying to survive, so that we're too tired to fight back. But that's exactly setting the stage historically over and over again. Look at any revolution or any small conflict, even just, between like a union and a boss anywhere. Look anywhere in history and you'll find out you squeeze the people, to a point where they're like, hey, that's enough. And then they fight back. And with the, with this interest, that I'm seeing in Palestine and in Gaza and the genocide, really spreading among people, and people really, pushing that veil of propaganda aside, especially young people. It's showing that people are not buying what they've always been sold. They're not buying the narrative anymore, and that's really got these countries in a panic. The NATO countries, and primarily the United States, who seems to be the boss of the world. So we are in a situation at this point where, when the empires become desperate, you got to get what's going on in Ukraine, where they're just stealing men off the street. They're going to start conscripting children soon, and that's always the last stage of something dying before. And it's always a good idea also to keep your perspective and not be like, oh, I support Russia 100%. I support China 100%. I support United States 100%. You can't, or Israel, or Ukraine. You cannot get sycophantic about these places, because any empire, no matter how big or small, is a bad thing. So it's bad for the people. So you have to, the thing that you should subscribe to is the proletariat point of view in any one of these places, not the top percent, not the rule makers, not the lawmakers, because they're always going to lead people down the wrong path, the path of capital gains. Even in socialistic countries, you have to keep your mind open, because there is, just because we believe that socialism is the right way to go, doesn't mean that it can't be corrupted as well. Doesn't mean you can't get bad faith actors in those spaces as well. Not necessarily for the purpose of changing things to capitalism, just using the system for personal gain and advantage. And that's what we, you always have to keep your eye on. And that's why you can't, get behind any one place and say, no, they're 100% right about this or that or the other thing. There's always two sides to a story.
I talk frequently about how there will almost definitely not be a predicted. You can all point to it like this was the singular revolutionary moment when everything got tipped over and things started popping off. I see people describing the U.S. situation as approaching like a Weimar Germany situation. That's the whole like using a wheelbarrow of cash to buy a loaf of bread because all of their economy exploded. And when things start really going to heck, how it's funny saying this now because Germany absolutely had a much more organized left, whatever you want to think of that as, at the time. That was like the number 2 or 3, I think, party in Germany when Hitler got elected was the Communist Party of Germany. And at the time, the prevailing wisdom was to go lesser of two evils against Hitler, and it just didn't work out because the communists were right there like, bitch, we are ready, and they're like, no, you can't, they're even worse, you stay away from and of course all the foreign influence of like the US and everybody else trying to goad on a Hitler and to go down the commies has kind of happened over and over in Europe, at least in like you can look at that happening in Austria, look at that happening in Germany, and World War II kind of had a tipping point of do we go towards this new socialism idea like the Russians just did, or are we going to go in the other direction? And the U.S. does not have a big, robust left, but things are going to shit. So are we just leaving open a big, wide door for the lazy right wing to just fucking walk through with no real resistance, kind of like what happened in Germany? They just have to look around like, look at your bill. What is it? Look at your paycheck. Look at your bills. I'm Billy the Racist, and that's. I endorse this message. I'm trying to remember what the tweet was, but it was like, man, something about this is like poetry, where you just point out the conditions. Go like, look, you're broken. Everything sucks. Why not do some crazy Nazi shit?
You're right. Yeah, let's just go for it.
And a surprising number of people.
That before. That's something that we talked about, like doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. And kind of blundering into...
People are going to do something. So
yeah.
You have to create a play. Like, look, here's a thing that we could do that would be productive.
Yeah. We're also, you kind of have to keep trying to step back as much as you can from being within the situation, which is hard to do because it's just like, oh, we're trying to figure out what the whole world is doing. We're trying to figure out what the whole United States is doing. This is confusing, but I recommend this. Try to gauge the situation as best that you can whenever you can, because, look around yourself and then look around everyone else, and you got to think, like, as Jared said, things are going to shit in a really rapid fashion. We know that they have been for the past 40-ish years, but, we've really hit the accelerator here on this. And, that's why you see this kind of term being floated around that we've talked about a little bit called the MAGA communism. And that's an antithetical, those words don't really go together. But the fact of it is that the kind of, even the MAGA people have this perspective of America first, right? So if they take that perspective and then they say, like, okay, America first, and then they're seeing all this money going out to foreign wars, and that doesn't necessarily agree. That doesn't necessarily say that they agree with, the military spending either. That they tend to be the more hoorah, group of people, more believe with the state. But at the same time, they see the money going out, but they don't see anything coming in. And that's why a lot of them supported Donald Trump in his first run, because they saw him as a very successful businessman, took him at his word. He said he was a billionaire. They believed it. He's on television. He's on a game show. He's been around forever. We all know him. He's been a celebrity forever. He's got celebrity friends. You can look back in history at any point and see him with celebrities and whatever. So people looked at that the way that they look at celebrity and thought, this guy knows how to money. He's gonna money us, and that didn't happen. But and then it got worse, because essentially what Biden has done in his presidency is really just carry on where Trump left off. I think if he had won re-election, we would be in probably the exact same situation as we are now. And then people are, trying to fearmonger and say, like, oh, well, if we let Trump back into the presidency, which is going to happen, if we let Trump back into the presidency, he's going to do a genocide. It's happening already, people, cousins, friends. It's already happening. We're already there. And, there's a lot of talk here. I don't want to get too far off topic, but there's a lot of talk going on right now about the Project 2025. It's really, really scaring people. And people are like, oh, this is the worst thing that could ever possibly be. We have got to keep those Republicans out of everything. We can't. The Democrats are on the same side. That's what uniparty is. They would not object to any of this stuff, maybe in small measure, but it's all, if this is what the empire, if this is what our uniparty believes that they, it's going to benefit them and the corporations that are paying them and the PACs like IPAC that's paying them to do these things, that's where things are going to go. So the root of the problem is with who is representing us and what they're getting away with. And that's where we need to be putting our attention to. And that's the next thing. And were you going to follow up on that, or should we jump into the military?
Well, talking about revolutionary moments and things that, things that could light a spark, much like this is unpopular in Ukraine to be forced into military activity, mm-hmm. It is unpopular in the United States to be forced into military activity, even though we, as everybody here knows, and all men definitely know because you had to sign up legally, we have a draft in the U.S. Yeah. U.S. citizens, male U.S. citizens aged 18 to 24, you must sign up for selective service. And if you don't and they find out about it, it's like a felony. You get in big trouble.
You kind of don't. You kind of do. You kind of don't. It's more like a kind of an empty threat because nobody's really been prosecuted for it since 1986. And it's usually like if you get and it's only like 14 people ever for not signing up. And it's like, it's sort of, but now it might be because of what they're doing here. They might try to scare you with it a little bit more than before. Like, oh, because before it would just be like, oh, you can't get a driver's license in Iowa or something, But now, now there's, again, we're talking dying empire here, and this is exactly what happens in a dying empire, where there's talk of a draft, and you think, okay, well, they did it in the 70s, they did it in the world because it goes all the way back to the 1917 First World War, but every time that happened, there was a period of time where people in the government that were elected were essentially forced to realize the error of the previous people's ways, and then they'd stop it. So the last time there was an actual literal draft pool was in 1975, following Vietnam, and we haven't literally gone back to it, but selective service has always been a requirement for signing up. But now they're trying to say, oh, well, we're just modernizing the system. Like all things, we're just modernizing it. It's totally normal to do that. So that's where we are right now.
So we got the House of Representatives passed a measure on Friday. Oh yeah, we're going from Al Jazeera to Fox News, which is funny to me because I'm just looking for somebody who summarized this stuff. But the fact that it came,
right,
and actually, like skimming through this, it has a different spin than you would even expect. It's kind of cute. The House of Representatives passed a measure on Friday automatically registering men aged 18 to 26 for selective service. Well, I thought I said 24, but whatever. Like Nicolette said, the House passed it, so the Senate didn't, and the President didn't sign it. So this isn't like a full law yet, but it could potentially be.
Pretty easy. I mean, they're on the same side. It's not like saying, one side doesn't want this. This is where we are in a crazy time right now where it's just where's this war shit coming from? Because I figured out how much money could be made at this particular point.
This actually, this next sentence means this. So this probably is about to be law. It was part of the annual National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, where if you ever want to get mad at like squad people, that's the easiest go-to of like, oh, you're a progressive. Why do you keep voting for the wars? I didn't vote for the wars. Well, here is your vote next to the National Defense Authorization Act, which sets the military budget and allows us to do wars. That is voting for the wars.
Yeah, giving the military almost $1 trillion.
We're up $9 billion from last time, so now we're at $895.2 billion, and that's for a year. Notice they never do the over 10 years thing for the military ones. They never take what's 8.6 trillion. Yeah, they're not going to put it that way. They just do the 1 year. But if you talk about like a healthcare bill, it's like, well, over 50 years, it will cost $1 trillion. It's like, oh no, over 50 years.
They're just throwing money. And this we don't. I don't have the data in front of me, but like we have all seen the stories about like the audits of the Pentagon about how much money is lost, stolen, pilfered. Resources just gone out the window, stuff they can't account for. So, much of this is going to go the exact same way as that. Like, oh, where did it go? We don't know. We didn't know we had to keep track or whatever.
I like how, like, recently they sent some more weapons to Israel, but they didn't vote on it. And everyone's like, well, what? I thought the president couldn't do, like, I thought you needed a vote of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, we're pulling this from an authorization act 10 years ago. Like, oh, we didn't spend the money of that one, so we like there's always a way. There's like some freaking creepy loophole where, oh, sorry, you voted on this 2 Congresses ago, therefore it still counts.
Right. Still counts. It still counts. We can still do it.
While it hasn't been invoked, Jesus, what's wrong with me? While it hasn't been invoked in over half a century, it's mandatory for all male U.S. citizens to register for the selective service, also known as the military draft. When they turn 18, failure to register is classified as a felony and comes with a host of legal challenges. Supporters of the amendment argue that it would cut down on bureaucratic red tape and help U.S. citizens avoid unnecessary legal issues, as well as cutting down on the taxpayer
dollars. We're doing this for you.
Going towards prosecuting those cases. It was led by Representative Chrissy Houlihan, Democrat, Pennsylvania, funny, and passed the House, passed the Armed Service Committee version of the NDAA in May.
And there's this liberal idiocracy, like always, but there's a lot of talking. This article may go on to say this, but people are like, you get this liberal point of view, this very Democrat point of view, who's like who are just as much warmongers as anybody else, but then they're like, oh well, with selective services only says men, it should have women too. Like it's like there shouldn't fucking be one. What the hell is going on? And then you end up with all these stupid points of view mixing into the same thing, like into this pool of dipshit, which is like, no, there should not be conscription should not exist, period, because America is just dying to be able to do stuff what other countries do, where they, like Japan and I think Switzerland, like some of these other countries where, and obviously Israel, where they make their people, their citizens serve in the military for at least a year after high school or whatever. And it's mandatory, but they've never been able to make that be a thing here that people would get behind in great enough measure. So this goes into that, trying to figure out any way to move the country towards permanent militarization. and put us in that situation.
Talking yesterday, thinking about last week when I read that chunk of Lenin where he keeps talking about like, oh, this is a hard question. He's like, all of political life is a series of questions that go in circles that form a chain with infinite links. This is kind of one of those. Should women be drafted is easily one of those like, oh, cool, this just goes in a circle forever and never doesn't lead to...
Let's just circle the fucking drain forever and never get anywhere on anything.
Let's say we perfected that issue. Let's say we made the draft entirely equitable in every possible way. Cool. What has that really done for anyone? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
More female prison guards. Hooray.
Right. Yeah, right? Like, it's done nothing for anyone. And that's why you see so much Israel military propaganda, like with these really pretty girls who are doing military shit. And it's like, what the fuck this is not okay. This should not be happening. You cannot appeal to people in this way. And especially since people, especially young people, which is how it always happens, look at the end of Vietnam and the protests there. This particular generation of millennials who are now older, but the Gen Zs and then whoever's going to come behind them are not buying into this state propaganda bullshit. So their recruitment is way down compared to what it would have been in past generations. And so that's another reason that they are trying to look into ways to force people into this situation, because not only is interest down, but like we kind of just had a really bad outbreak, which I can't say the word because our video will get flagged, but we kind of just had a bad outbreak situation like the movie, and now a lot of people are not well. And it would be, just in the meantime, think about your children or think about yourself. It's a really good time to get, your health documented, get any health issues documented well, because this is the start of something, not the whole story. We've been covering this topic for a while. This is not the first time this has come up, that the Pentagon has been talking about some sort of way to implement some kind of partial draft, some kind of thing. And this goes beyond soldiering too, which you think like, well, okay, we'll protest that, right? We'll see that doesn't happen. Well, a lot of these companies, like IT companies and Intel companies and manufacturing companies, basically without, the workers say so, will also be conscripted into this. And then you might be working, at a manufacturing company, or you might be working IT. And then sometime eventually you find out you've been making military weapons and you didn't know, or like you weren't asked. And it's like, okay, do I leave my job now? Oh, wait, the whole industry is turning the tide of this, so this is not just, we won't soldier. This is also like whole industries getting kind of bought out, let's say, terminology wise, and put into this, but they will make it appear like the propaganda machine will make it appear like this is some very special honor, or it's so cool to be able to do this, or lucky you, or you're going to get paid so much. This is affecting every aspect of life. And a lot of people can come together on this from all sides of the spectrum, politically, and say, this is wrong, this is bad, this can't happen. And
Here, let me show you the weirdest... Whenever these votes come by, I always like to look up like, all right, well, who voted for it? Who actually didn't vote for it? So here's the House bill, roll call, blah, blah. Service Member Quality of Life Improvement and National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2025. So this is part of the thing. So these votes aren't all going to be, I'm sure if you ask all these representatives, they'll say they did vote for this reason or did not vote for other reasons. Because there's a lot of stuff in these bills. If you go on to read in this article, it talks about how there was the largest ever military pay raise in history, with a 19.5% increase for junior enlisted troops, 4.5% increase. So if you talk to somebody about why did you vote for us, like, well, I really wanted the ball, I'll get a raise. Like, they have to have something in there for everybody so people can go argue to their constituents. But if you think that this is a thing that should not pass, and okay, let's do all parties, all votes. Let's do the nay votes. So how many people actually voted nay? We had no's, 199 no's. So actually, the vast majority of Democrats did vote against this, which is strange.
Very strange. And probably just because they're holding out. Let's
Still
not get
passed.
unrealistic about it. This is not a wholly, like a virtuous situation. If you look at the money that the PACs pay out and the companies pay out and these contractors pay out, a lot of these places people are just like, if I hedge my bet here a little bit longer and then they reform the bill after I've gotten my palm greased here, I'm going to get something out of this.
I'm pretty sure these are simple majority votes. So the fact that it was it 199 to 217, meaning 17 of those people could have. You'll see not voting 15 total people. Like 11 Democrats were like, I'm gonna do the AOC thing and bravely not vote at all, and then. And you also have 3 Republicans who voted against it. So you can see where it's like, well, even though it was kind of close, everything worked out that it still passed. Like enough people voted no who needed to vote no, voted yes who voted vote yes to keep up all. So who actually voted no? Let's see. We have a lot of Democrats. So let's go to who are those 3 Republicans? Oh, look, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene. Actually voted against the thing, so this is a person who now has voted how I would expect and demand any squad member to vote. That's who's opposing this. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's how fucking upside down things are at this point.
If you want to be against it, you got Massey, who's not as surprising. Thomas Massey, I think, is kind of a complete idiot who is very correct on like 3 things. Which is actually, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is
right.
a very smart political opportunist who is right on like 3 things. And then who is this? Rosendale? I don't even know this guy. Matthew Rosendale from Montana. Good job, Billings, I guess. But like, great. If you're way into electoralism, your heroes in this vote, there you go. That's them.
They're fucking Batman villains.
That's who you can like.
It's horrible. That's how upside down things are. The whole squad thing, we don't need to rehash all of this at this point now because everybody realizes this, I think. But the whole squad nonsense was like this red herring, basically. It was, a distraction, a complete misdirection of like, look over here. These guys are your new heroes. Meanwhile, they were always going to be part of the machine anyways.
AOC did vote against it. I'm kind of surprised. I thought she would vote present or something, but no.
Yeah.
She would vote against it.
Interesting.
Sorry, continue. I'm just going to keep throwing these in your life.
It's an interesting mixture of yeses and nos, but you got to remember also, it's not just, can we spend all this money on the military? Yes or no? There's a lot of little bullet points.
Here's stupid ass.
In here.
Here's Matt Gaetz.
They just only disagree
yes.
with one of the little bullet points. While what he vote?
He voted yes. I think he's supposed to be one of the anti-war guys, and he's voting for it. So.
But that kind of makes my point. Is like it's sort of a mixed bag in the way that it's like you can't expect that like these 2 teams are so different from each other. They want the same thing, and that's to enrich themselves.
It passed, and that's what they care about.
These people, they see themselves as celebrity, pretty much in the worst time to be a celebrity because everybody hates celebrities now, thank God. But
Grijalva voted not voting present. You puss, you fucking coward. You asshole. Get out of here. He's in Tucson.
Oh my God, Jared, I love you. You're so funny.
Tucson is such a safe. Tucson is like the bluest part of Arizona. You're fine, man. Don't.
Right? Yeah. Like you're not gonna this is not gonna harm you whatsoever. You can do whatever you want, basically. Like, and that's what we're really talking about here. Like the big takeaway is, and that's why the headline is, now automatic conscription into selective service. Right? Like that's why all the headlines that it's not like some other little point, like also pay raise, like that's not what's important here. And even these mainstream news sources are realizing that trouble is on the horizon here. Anytime that, we start talking draft in a serious way, like there's a problem. There's a serious problem with leadership. And we don't need to really even litigate like the Nixon leadership and, Johnson and that kind of thing because of things like it was bad. It was fucking bad, right? Like that was pretty much renowned as like the worst political leader like of all like American history. And we did a show some ways back. You can look at our archive about the kind of damage that he did with Henry Kissinger because he was so stupid that he had to have somebody else come in and basically run the show. And Kissinger just leveled parts of the world that are still not economically or ecologically recovered in a lot of circumstances, let alone like the toll. It wasn't that long ago, right? So that's what we're looking at, and this is going to be an ongoing thing, and we're going to talk about this, a lot because it's a good thing that everyone is starting to get into this protest mode as a way of existing. Coming from off the George Floyd protests to the Palestine protests. Now you're starting to understand what this is all about, because if they suddenly, like tomorrow, come out on the news and be like, we're starting a draft pool, That's the fucking end of it. Like that, like protests need to start like no one's ever done before. Everybody in the streets.
The
No
hope
one
is
paying
that you
bills.
have a strong, organized left to have something for them. Because I'll tell you, frickin' Nick Fuentes and whoever the fuck is ready. They are ready as soon as if that draft shit goes down. They're like, look, here's some weird right-wing thing. It's about the white race, I guess. Whatever the hell they're going to come up with. Like, they have something ready. If you don't have something ready, like the socialist mission at this point is to point out the very real ways in which all of these struggles are connected. Why would we need to have a military draft? Well, you see, that's involved with these foreign wars. Why do we do the foreign wars? Well, you see, that gets into capital and banker capital and the division and redivision of the world by by the NATO empire. It's like it all does link into itself. Like, people are living on your street corner because war in Palestine. Like, these things are directly, they're only like maybe 2 links apart from each other in this chain. It's not even a stretch to connect them. It's like, we refuse to develop here, or rather we are restricting development here, at least among the proletarians. Like, development amongst the uppest most class is going fine. You know, they're moving around their money, they're taking their numbers, rubbing them together, the line is going up. They're all very happy. That's why, like, the economy's great right now, you idiots. Can't you tell how great the economy is right now? Like, why are you complaining about anything?
Yeah, for
that's
who?
directly
Who is the
connected
economy good for right now, and why?
To keep our upper 1% development rolling, we have to restrict the development of other countries. Why is Israel important? Because it's going to keep the war or some kind of fight going until the end of time, which is going to keep Iran from developing. It keeps Saudi Arabia from like, everybody in that area can't focus on actually dealing with their real problems for their citizenry because we got this whole other thing we got to go like. We have this war with Israel. We have this war. We got to all fight over Ukraine. They don't care about winning any of these conflicts. The U.S. hasn't won a war since.
No, it's just making
the
money
Civil
off
War.
of it.
I guess we won that one.
Somebody did.
It was
It's
us against ourselves.
It's just the making money off of it. So this, and I've said this before. I don't know if I've mentioned it on air before, but it's like if we took the momentum of these protests, now think about taking that and turning that on healthcare. Like getting ourselves some stuff. But this ultimately could become something, depending on how daring they get with it, how fast that and it's not just up to socialists to commandeer, the anti-protests about, drafting people. Like,
I don't think about it as commandeering. It's about focusing. If you can't try and distract them, you don't turn the energy. You're just like, yes, this is correct.
Yeah,
it
has to come from everywhere. It has to come from everywhere, and I think it will. I don't think it's just socialists or people or the younger people who would be most victimized by this who are against it. I think that there's a lot of veterans who would be like, absolutely, who volunteer for service, who would be like, absolutely not. We still have people alive who were drafted into Vietnam, and these people, I think a lot of them would be like, absolutely not. So you have to look at, like, there is no such thing, despite propaganda, despite what your parents or your grandparents say, you are not duty bound to serve this country. That is old thinking. That is bullshit. That was never a thing. That was crap that was made up to make you feel some sort of something about doing it. That's bullshit. They're asking you to die for their profits. They're, are not honor bound. That is bullshit too. You cannot succumb to any kind of pressure, if it came down to it where they're like, you have to do it. That's horseshit too. It's all made up. None of it is real. It's none, you don't owe this country anything. This country owes you for simply existing in it. And that's where we need to get back to is, somebody lives here. Somebody's doing something for our country. You're working and paying taxes. That's your duty. There's your service. Thank you for your service. That's it.
I would love to see in some weird utopian future that I don't talk about usually. I would love to see if we have dictatorship of the proletariat and like worker control. If we have a government of, by, and for the people, but for real, not like what we have right now, I would love to see our vast military resources used domestically for various improvement projects. We used to have the civilian whatever corps, and they would just all right, clear this forest fire area of sticks so it doesn't all burn down. Like, just like make all the national park
levy
trails
or whatever.
Build a dam. Army Corps of Engineers, wouldn't you love to make some more nuclear power plants? Wouldn't you love to help, like, this area keeps flooding. Let's build some retainer walls. Let's fix the levees and
the bridges
freaking
and the roads and make
fix a
mass
bridge.
transportation and shit. Yeah, no, and that's exactly what we're constantly talking about. This bloated, ridiculous military budget that they're putting off as like, okay, we have to have it. We don't have to have it. America's not under threat. America's allies in NATO are not under any kind of threat, but they want you to believe that Russia and China are coming for you. They're not. They're not your enemies. Whether you support what they do or they don't do, they're not your enemies. They are the enemies of the NATO and America's bottom line. They're the ones interfering by not. Why won't you let us have your country? Why won't you just let us have it? Why? We could be making the money instead of you. That's what this argument is. It's about greed and it's about acquisitions, and that's why we pump so much money into Israel, even though they have no right to be there. And as America has a history of doing, of taking, the land that belonged to other people and capitalizing on it for themselves. So that's where we basically stand here. And so this is like the next step in what we've been reporting on thus far. This is the road so far. So we will continue to look at this, first of all, to see if it's going to pass the Senate, which I don't really see any problem with it passing the Senate. Generally a president is just like, yep, anytime Senate, there's really never any argument about a military spending bill, and they're always going up.
If you put something in the military spending bill, it's getting that's where you put this must go through. But they are technically correct in that when they talk about this just eliminates like red tape and bureaucratic blah blah blah. I mean, if you're legally required to do it anyway, it's almost like, well, why haven't we been doing this? Like, why don't we do this with everything else that you need when you turn 18? Like, why don't you just get an ID in the mail when you're 18? Things we've had arguments about forever. If you're required to have an ID, well, they didn't have ID. That's why they got in all this trouble. It's like, well, why don't you just give them one? You can't vote without. You shouldn't be able to vote without ID. It's like, great, then give everyone an ID. Like,
yeah,
I know that's kind of like a mini spiral I can get myself involved in, because I don't think our electoral system is capable of is designed to produce any kind of change. But they're just showing us right now they could have done something like that with this same political energy. If you're going to auto sign people up for the draft, you could freaking auto sign up people for the FAFSA, auto sign up people for housing and food stamps and the health care that they qualify for and all these other things. But they clearly don't want that, because that's the point of the paperwork in the first place. That's the means testing.
Slow people down, exactly.
They're trying to keep you out of this.
Slow people down. Plus, we talked about this a little bit before the show. It's like, it's the same as you use your driver's license as your primary form of ID, but having a driver's license and passing a little paper test doesn't make you a better driver. The people, there's not like, oh, these guys didn't have a driver's license and they caused all the accidents, but the guys with a driver's license didn't. That's just a way to squeeze people for more money, and then they take all your information and they sell it to the cops. So the fact of the matter is these things that you're legally required to have, yet they make it completely difficult and very difficult and almost unattainable for a lot of people to come by, especially the whole trying to update the system to like, you need like 100 pieces of ID so that you can get the new one for you go on airplanes or whatever. It's like, you guys just fuck off already. This is so stupid.
You have an ID, but you don't have a real ID.
A real ID, right? Yeah. Like,
give me a fake ID?
Where we're at. We're in this mess of a place, and it's like throw it on the pile, right? Throw it on the pile of problems. And that is exactly goes back to what Jared was saying, is we need to look at this in a more holistic way as people, and either start looking at things about like nullifying the power of local government or the federal government, because there have been incidences here in the past few years where votes didn't go exactly how local municipalities wanted, and then they started being like, do we really need a mayor? So
I know of municipalities where they will stick in, like the state will just decide, like, your town is irresponsible. We're putting a governing board over your town. It's 2 people and we appoint them. Like, that happens all the time in the Midwest. I've heard about that in Michigan. Like,
and
probably
the thing
Indiana.
of it is, it's like things need to be done by committee, ultimately, but like appointed committee. Or if you want to talk about conscription, that like jury duty, essentially, like if you pay taxes, you have the possibility of being called for jury duty, whether or not you make it onto the jury or not. And the fact of it is that if people had to go into service, they should go into service for this country and have to, maybe spend some time on a committee, working, for the greater good of your community. We're kind of getting back into the utopian thing. But
people are hungry to work for their community. They just don't see a way to do it. Like,
right. A lot of people, I agree with you. I think a lot of just average people, let's not say people who maybe just like had like, just the top echelon of people who are zero and from just live their life, happily forgetting that only me and only me. But like, I think most people, whatever is left of the middle class, most proletarian people, most people would like the opportunity to do something good for the place that they live. Even if it's just like, let's put flower baskets at the corners of all of the intersections. It could be as simple as that, or it could be like, we need new bridges, or no, you cannot mow down our historical landmark for a highway, or that kind of thing. There are so many things that people would be like more civically engaging with if they had the opportunity to do so. Conscription seems a bit much, but if you're going to be conscribed into anything, it should be in service to your own country, not serving foreign wars, not serving military anything. And I think that's where we're really at. So we're going to keep an eye on this story, because what choice do we really have? But again, just as a reminder, you're not duty bound by anything. That's not a thing. And you should definitely go, if you have the opportunity, assuming you've got health insurance, or insurance you can afford, you can go to, you should go and get your any kind of medical conditions documented, because especially anything, at all, just as an insurance into going forward. So
go see if you qualify for Medicaid. You might be surprised.
That's a good point too. And the more people who ask for these services, a few weeks back we were talking about, or I guess a couple months back, we were talking about the end of the Affordable Connectivity Program, which gave people internet at a serious discount, and they just decided we're not going to fund it anymore, so it's over. And it's not a coincidence that happened on an election year, because the most people that benefited from that were poor, very low income people, elderly people, that kind of a thing. So, if they can fund all of this ridiculous military bloated spending that, that most of it's all just going to get pissed away anyways, if we can fund all this other stuff, we need to start looking about things more domestically. And we need to take this energy that we put into learning how to protest well, learning how to protest effectively, and for what, and expand on that. So we will keep this coming at you in the coming weeks. And as always, you can reach us on our Twitter, where it's at, our handle is at the number one social contract. Yes, that's the name of our show. It's new. It's like a new page, so I had to think about it. At numeral one social contract. So throw us your comments, questions, ideas. You can reach out to us. Our DMs are open so far as that goes. And we do have, we'll put it up at the next episode. We have a PayPal. So if you like what you see, you can donate a couple bucks our way. And that would maybe help us elevate the quality of the show a little bit, so we don't have to jump through so many hoops to try to get it out here to you. But as far as that goes, we're going to keep our eye on all of this, and we will.
I was going to say, for the PayPal, send us some money, and it'll go towards the Get Nicolette a Microphone Fund. But that might just be a birthday or Christmas present. I'll send you a thing.
Does my mic not work?
Doesn't not work. I would just love if you had the same kind of situation as me, where you're 2 inches from your microphone.
Here we go with the musician with his professional audio equipment. Like, you need to have a better mic. I'll bet I do need to have a better mic. But yeah, if you guys want to throw us a couple of bucks to improve the quality of our show, and apparently my microphone.
This is like the first thing. It's the first, and probably some of the only like DMs I ever sent. RBN, who's like the main Nick from RBN. Because I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I say this without just sounding like I'm trying to be a troll or a douchebag? But I'm like, hey, you have thousands and thousands of viewers. Sorry, my echo is on, my reverb is on, by the way. Everyone can enjoy that. You have thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of viewers. But you're like, I think at the time they were just going through, like, they had like the earbuds with the headphone, like, microphone as part of the headphone strap, like that comes like with your iPhone. And I'm like, okay, will you allow me to buy you this? That's how I phrase it. It's like, not you go get a mic. It's like, do you have like a P.O. box? I'm going to send you this microphone, And within like 2 weeks, he had a mic that was like right here, and I'm like, oh shit, it
Oh.
happened.
Wow. Yeah.
I see people with
that
large
socialists taking
followings.
care of socialists. That was a really kind thing that you did for them.
Oh, that's the thing. I didn't send it. They basically
Oh.
said like, "Hey, thanks for like they had like a nice like go away kind of reply." Basically like, "Thank you, I appreciate it."
Well,
like,
you tried.
we're doing everything we can over here. We're doing our best.
Yeah.
And then
okay.
a week later, it had that USB mic.
Yeah, that's yeah. Well, we're now that we're doing our own thing and we're kind of in the groove. We're working on kind of figuring everything out and how we can broadcast better and what we can do better. So yeah, we'll work on that. So, but until then, I'm going to turn you over to Mr. Jared, who's going to treat us to a song today, and or Mayor Jared, whichever you prefer.
Mayor McCheese over here.
Okay, well, he's going to treat us to a song, and we will see you guys next week. All of you, not you guys, all of you, everyone. And you just you'll see you on our socials and all that. So take care, everybody.
This is another cover. This is by John Hartford. It's called Back in the Good Old Days. Someday about 25 years from now, we've all grown older from wondering how. I'll sit down at the city dump and talk about the good old days. Oh, you'll pass the joint and I'll pass the wine, and anything good from down the line. A lot of good things went down one time back in the good old days. And the good old days are past and gone. A lot of good people have done gone on. That's my life when I sing this song about back in the good old days. Sometimes I get to thinking that we're almost done and there ain't nothing left that we can figure out. And I guess it must have seemed a lot more like that back in the good old days. But when you gotta go, you gotta go. There's always somebody, don't you know, hanging around saying, well, I told you so, back in the good old days. And the good old days are past and gone. A lot of good people have done gone on. Well, that's my life while I sing this song about back in the good old days. Oh, we'll all join hands and we'll gather round when that old guitar starts to make that sound. A lot of good things went down, down, down back in the good old days. He's in love with the people that we haven't even met, out for anything that we could get. Oh, we did it then and we'll do it yet, back in the good old days. And the good old days are past and gone. A lot of good people who've done gone on. Well, that's my life when I sing this song about back in the good old days. See you next week, guys.